Born from a public story writing contest, the next film would veer away from the themes of nuclear fears and instead tackle uncertainty and debate over the relatively new field of genetic research and biotechnology in 1989's Godzilla vs Biollante.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town,
Hello everyone and welcome back to Chills and Thrills. My name is Connor Dunham. I am here with Chris and we are both very excited today to be doing 1989's Godzilla vs Biollante. And this is a film that I absolutely enjoy from top to bottom. I like the human characters. I love Godzilla. I love Biollante. I like all the undertones of it. There's so much to appreciate in this. And this is one of the films that I would say got a lot of rewatches from me ever since I first saw it when I was younger. It's one of my go-tos to turn on when I'm bored or just don't know what to watch, or if I want some background noise to clean the house. You know, it's one of those films that if you are a Godzilla fan, 95% of Godzilla fans know what this film is and they enjoy it. And if you're not a Godzilla fan, this is one of the ones that I think that you should still give a chance. If there was 5 or 10 that I could tell you to watch out of the entire series, this one would for sure be in it. So, Chris, how do you feel about this film? Got any fond memories of it?
Yeah, first and foremost, I second pretty much everything you said. For me, when I was in the very young days of renting Godzilla movies from my local Blockbuster, sort of the kind of 95, 96, 97, 98 period of time, this was the newest Godzilla movie that my local Blockbuster had. Before some of the other Heisei movies had kind of been brought over, this was one of the newer ones that my local Blockbuster had for a bit. And so it was always very appealing to me for that reason, because it didn't feel that sort of old and corny and cheesy as some of the other ones that I would watch even as a kid. This one felt, you're talking in the 90s, this one basically felt brand new. And I always, I can go on and on about all of the things I love about it. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, but it also holds up incredibly well. I think it's got to be one of the strongest entries in the series overall, like even beyond the Heisei era, but it's certainly one of the examples of the peak of this particular series as well. I think the effects work. It's one of the last times that the effects work is sort of, you could pick out like Batman 1989 and look at the visual effects work in that movie, and it doesn't put this movie to shame in any kind of way. And that was like the biggest Hollywood blockbuster of the year. It's not completely tooling and shaming the creature effects works that you see in this movie. This feels like it's of a Hollywood equivalent, and after this point that doesn't really hold up anymore. And the musical score is great. I think it's got one of the best sets of human characters in one of these movies. They have interesting things going on. It's got unique and interesting wrinkles to the plot that are unique to this Godzilla movie, that aren't just the typical rehashing of Godzilla's attacking and we have to stop him or thwart him. There's other mechanizations going on in the plot here, and I like that as well. It's just got a lot going for it. It moves along at a really good pace, has great monster action, great effects, great music. It's kind of the whole package as far as a good Godzilla movie, especially to show a normie that's never seen one.
Absolutely. And I know on our last episode, The Return of Godzilla, I said that I found myself bored a little bit with the film, but the time was still flying by. And then it's the exact opposite with this one for the being bored. I was having so much fun on every rewatch, but the time still just flies by like no other. It's an hour and 44-minute film with credits and everything, and it just feels like, I think Godzilla, the first fight scene with Biollante is like 55 minutes in, and you're watching it, and you get to that scene, and it's like, geez, how long have I been watching this? It feels like you've been watching for 25 minutes, and you're almost an hour in.
Yeah, it has a great plot progression in terms of, it does a fun thing that I like, which is sort of beginning during the events of the previous movie. I kind of enjoy it when franchises do stuff like that to kind of carry over directly from one movie into the next movie to kind of put you in the headspace. So you kind of start off revisiting some events from the previous movie, and then you're just the plot is being advanced in every scene. The status quo of Godzilla being monitored in the volcano. They foreshadow his release. He gets released. He's rampaging. They're using the Super X on him. Biollante's getting her origin story depicted. They cross paths. Like it's just, again, it's properly paced in a very, very good way.
Yeah, it doesn't overwhelm you all at once. It gives you a storyline, explains a little bit, and then another storyline comes in. It gives you a little bit at a time, just enough to chew on, and then gives you another bite to take, or per se.
Yeah, exactly. It's not your usual, let's get all of the exposition and human drama and stuff out of the way in the first 50 minutes and then just let the monsters fight for 25 minutes. It's not that kind of structure.
Yeah, and it's there's quite a bit of action in this film. From Biollante attacking the guys who break into the lab, and then you get Godzilla, being released from the volcano and him fighting Biollante, and then Super X and Godzilla fighting the military, and then Godzilla fighting Biollante again. There's so much action in this film. And then the human characters keep you intrigued as well with what they're doing. And like we've said, it runs at a phenomenal pacing for being an hour and 40+ minute film.
Yeah, and even the human characters get their own, it's a human plotline that sort of incorporates a decent amount of action in and of itself, because it's not your typical just humans reacting to Godzilla. They have a sort of human villain, a human antagonist that kind of spices things up and keeps tensions high and keeps things interesting. So, there's a bit more going on both sides of the plot. It's not just humans reacting to whatever Godzilla is or isn't doing and being disconnected in that way. They have their own things going on, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could clearly talk about this forever. So before we get into all the fun stuff, let me give you a little background and history on the film. Godzilla vs. Biollante is a 1989 Japanese kaiju film written and directed by Kazuki Omori with special effects by Koichi Kawakita. It was distributed by Toho and produced under the subsidiary Toho Pictures. It is the 17th film in the Godzilla franchise and the second film in the franchise's Heisei period, and a sequel to 1984's Return of Godzilla. This film stars Kunihiko Mitamura, Yoshiko Tanaka, Masanobu Takashima, Megumi Odaka, Tori Minagishi, Yasuko Sawaguchi, Toshiyuki Nashigima, Yoshiki Kuga, Hironosuke Kaneda, and Koji Takahashi. This was Okada's first appearance in the Godzilla franchise as Miki Sagusa, and she would reprise her role in every film for the remainder of the Heisei series. And I absolutely adore her. I had the biggest crush when I was younger, and I still find her to be very pretty today.
Oh yeah, we're of the same generation there. Megumi Odaka as Miki Sagusa is just one of those staple characters of the franchise, and yeah, loved that character growing up, still love that character.
Absolutely. In this film, corporations struggle for control over samples of Godzilla cells, while the monster itself battles a creature born from a combination of Godzilla cells. plant cells and the cells of a woman. The idea originated from a public story writing contest, and it also set a trend common to all Heisei-era movies in which Godzilla faces off against opponents capable of metamorphosing into new and more powerful forms. And Godzilla vs. Biollante was released theatrically in Japan on December 16th, 1989, and it received a direct-to-video release in the United States on November 25th, 1992 through HBO Video. Although it received mostly positive reviews, the film was a disappointment at the Japanese box office, which is sad to hear because, I mean, this film, out of the 17 we have so far, is probably top 3 for me, no doubt, from what we have so far.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, top 3, top 5, it's certainly up in any kind of discussion. I think it's one of the very best. It's such a shame because it deserved to be massive. And the only silver lining there is that over the years, its reputation as a Godzilla movie has stayed very high. And from what I understand, there's even been a few cases in Japan where there were more modern audience polls of like ranking the Godzilla movies, and this one has, I think, come at the top or near the very top several times. So I think it's very consistently regarded as a fan favorite over the years, and I think that's a great thing. It's got a strong legacy associated with it. So, you know, it's not all about whether or not it made the most in that first theatrical release.
Yeah, because afterwards, this film, people started to take notice once, you know, VHS was released and everything like that. And now this is one of the most popular and probably the hardest to find Godzilla film on DVD or Blu-ray that there is.
Yeah. I hope, you know, I've got a Blu-ray copy. I'm fortunate enough for that, but I always hope whenever these things go out of print or go really high in price on the secondary market that you know, that hopefully we're around the corner for some really great, new, awesome, top tier release. You know, I always love that the Criterion set was able to put all of the Showa films out there for everyone to get very easily and very sort of affordably, you know. So I hope that for some of these other movies that are harder to find, that there's a big, nice, easy to access release here soon, you know.
Yeah, that would be great. Get a Criterion collection like they did for the Showa era. Maybe just bundle the Heisei and Millennium eras together, so you know you got, what would it be, 12 films or so, 13 films.
I mean, heck, I'd be fine doing one for the Heisei and one for the Millennium. You know, just keep them as, they'd be a lot smaller than the Showa sets, but I mean, heck, I'd be fine with giving each era its own box set.
Absolutely, I'd be 100% okay with that, because that would sell out. Just having Biollante in it on Blu-ray would sell out like crazy.
Yeah. And it's nice that this film was recently given a 4K restoration by Toho in Japan. It's the first of the Heisei films to be given a 4K restoration, and part of it is because of the legacy and positive word of mouth that it has over the years. So it got to be the first of the Heisei movies to get a nice brand new 4K restoration. And it's getting a 4K disc in Japan with no English subtitles and no English dub. But, you know, we have to hope that that's one step closer to maybe one day, even if not a 4K disc, maybe a Blu-ray disc using the 4K, you know, master for the image and sound that we can all enjoy. You know, fingers crossed.
Well, until then, I will for sure keep my fingers crossed. But I will go into a trailer for the film, and then we'll come back with a plot synopsis, give a little more detail on it, and then I think we can come back and maybe start with some numbers, go into our favorite character and stuff, and do a couple fun facts last before we talk about monster design.
That works for me.
All right, sounds good. So let's get into the trailer.
あれはただの植物ではない。ビオランテだ。
植物にゴジラ細胞を融合させただけじゃない。人間の細胞まで。
自己再生能力の遺伝子を持ったゴジラ細胞で永遠の命を持つ植物を作ったつもりだった。
ゴジラ攻撃の指揮を取らせていただきます。
日本列島を襲う二大怪獣の猛威、ゴジラかビオランテか。果たして人類は生き残れるのか。
ビオランテがゴジラを感じてるわ。
ゴジラ映画史上空前のスーパーバトル。
ビオランテが進化している。
ゴジラ対ビオランテ。
In the aftermath of Godzilla's attack on Tokyo and his later imprisonment on Mount Mahara, the monster's cells are secretly delivered to the Seradia Institute of Technology and Science, where they are to be merged with genetically modified plants in the hope of transforming Seradia's deserts into fertile land and ending the country's economic dependence on oil wells. Dr. Genshishiro Shiragami and his daughter Erika are enlisted to aid with the project, but a terrorist bombing destroys the Institute's laboratory, ruining the cells and killing Erika. 5 years later, Shiragami has returned to Japan and merged some of Erika's cells with those of a rose in an attempt to preserve her soul. Meanwhile, scientists Kazuhito Kirishima and Lieutenant Goro Gando of the JSDF are using the Godzilla cells they collected to create anti-nuclear energy bacteria, hoping it can serve as a weapon against Godzilla should it return. They attempt to recruit Shiragami to aid them, but are rebuffed. International tensions increase over the Godzilla cells as they are coveted by both the Seradia Institute of Technology and Science and the American Biomajor Organization. An explosion from Mount Mihara causes tremors across the area, including Shiragami's home, badly damaging the roses. Shiragami agrees to join the JFDF's effort and is given access to the Godzilla cells, which he secretly merges with one of the roses. A night later, rival Biomajor and Seradian agents break into Shiragami's lab but are attacked by a large plant-like creature which later escapes to Lake Ashi and is named Biollante by Shiragami. Biomajor agents plant explosives around Mount Mihara and blackmail the Diet of Japan, warning the explosives will be detonated and thus free Godzilla if the cells are not handed over. Kirishima and Gando attempt to trade, but Seradian agent SSS-9 thwart the attempt and escape with the cells. The explosives are detonated and Godzilla is released. Godzilla attempts to reach the nearest power plant to replenish its supply of nuclear energy, but Biollante calls out to Godzilla. Godzilla arrives at the lake to engage Biollante in a vicious battle, and emerges as the victor.
Godzilla then proceeds towards the power plant at Suraga, but psychic Miki Segusa uses her powers to divert it toward Osaka instead. The city is quickly evacuated before Godzilla makes landfall. A team led by Gando meet Godzilla at the central district and fire rockets infused with the ANEB into its body. Gando is killed in the process, and Godzilla leaves unharmed. Kirishima recovers the cells and returns them to the JSDF. Shiragami theorizes that if Godzilla's body temperature is increased, the ANEB should work against him. The JSDF erects microwave-emitting plates during an artificial thunderstorm, hitting Godzilla with lightning and heating up its body temperature during a battle near the shores of Wakasa Bay. Godzilla is only moderately affected, but Biollante, having obtained a more powerful form, arrives to engage Godzilla in battle once again. After a long battle, the fight ends after Godzilla fires an atomic heat ray inside Biollante's mouth, severely injuring Biollante. An exhausted Godzilla collapses on the beach as the bacterial infection finally takes hold, and Biollante splits apart into glowing spores which rise into the sky, forming an image of Erica among the stars. Shiragami, watching the scene, is shot by SSS-9. Kirishima chases the assassin, and after a brief scuffle, SSS-9 is killed by a microwave-emitting plate activated by Shokuruko. Godzilla reawakens and leaves for the ocean.
All right, Chris. Now, let's get into some numbers for you. We all like numbers. We all like seeing how these films did, how crappy Rotten Tomatoes is, and what they ranked these films or rated them. Godzilla vs. Biollante has a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. 95% of Google users liked this film, so again, go Google users.
Yeah, those Giga Chad Google users know what's up.
Absolutely. I mean, 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, I'd say that's fair. I would probably rate it higher, but you get some critics that no matter what you put out in a film, they're just negative about it.
They'll never respect a Godzilla movie.
No. Oh, another monster film? Thumbs down.
Yep.
Godzilla vs. Biollante had a budget of 700 million yen, and it sold between 2 and 2.5 million tickets and grossed 1.04 billion yen, and was the 8th highest grossing Japanese film of 1990. So that's pretty good, coming out in December of 89, and a lot of the films that come out the year before don't really get appreciated in the following year. So that's nice to see.
Yeah, and I forget, there were a couple of American movies that I think were released in Japan around that time that were sort of given all of the credit for kind of burying this one. I don't know if it was maybe like a Back to the Future sequel or something like that, but I remember like that was always like mentioned, that some of those American movies of that year or those years kind of outshined this one.
I could see that, an American film doing that, because a buddy of mine went to see the new Meg film, and I had heard Rotten Tomatoes had gave it a 0% in its like pre-screenings.
And look, I'm all for hating on some schlocky monster movies, but I mean, a 0%, come on now. I mean, that's the thing, is that the critic, like, the whole thing with critical reviews is that it's trying to kind of apply some semblance of an objective scale to rating movies. But it's like, how can you watch a rom-com and then watch a giant monster movie and then watch a superhero movie and somehow think in any kind of way that you can really judge those movies in any kind of even and objective way? It's like they're all trying to be different things, and you can judge them all. You have to do a little bit of judging them on their own merits for what they are. Like a giant monster movie that doesn't make you laugh isn't the same as a comedy movie that doesn't make you laugh. If a comedy movie isn't funny, that's horrible. If a movie like Oppenheimer isn't funny, that's normal. So I don't know. It's always odd to me. You'll see movies get praised for acting, but then you'll never see some movies get slammed for not having good CGI because they're dramas, but like they'll have some bad special effect. But yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling here, but the whole critic thing is just, it's kind of an annoyance.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some films that come out and they get a 80%, and then I watch it and I'm like, I mean, it was okay. And then I watch a movie that got a 40%, and I'm like, that was phenomenal. Like, the special effects were great, the character acting was great. Like, what didn't you like about it? But
yeah, the critics have their own subset list of check boxes that they have to make sure that a movie checks for them to give it a good review. It's not necessarily good and bad or enjoyable, not enjoyable. The critics are sometimes looking for other things.
Well, they need to get off their pedestal, because Godzilla vs. Biollante is like a 85 or 90 out of 100. So
it's peak cinema. It's peak cinema.
Right. It doesn't get any better for monster films. We'll just say that.
Hey, monster films from the 80s, this is hands down the greatest.
Absolutely. I got one more number for you, and that is Godzilla's screen time. He is on screen for 16 minutes and 49 seconds, or just under about 17% of the film, and he makes his first appearance at 39 minutes and 45 seconds, or just around 39% into the film, with a short tease of him about a minute into the film when they are recapping the return of Godzilla early on.
See again, that's where I take a little bit of umbrage with this, like, the tease doesn't count. It's like he is on screen clearly in that opening of that movie. Like, yes, maybe some of it's stock footage and things like that, but it's like he's there, like you're seeing it, like, you know, like I don't know, like I gotta, like, this whole, like, what qualifies as a tease and doesn't really count versus what counts as a full reveal. It's like he is right there in the opening. So I don't know. Again, each to their own. They can have whatever criteria they want, but I got to challenge it on some of these.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You know, he's standing there and you can see his whole body. They're shooting the lasers, and then it shows him smash into the building again where he leaves his Godzilla cells. And I find the tease like in GMK where they're underwater in the submarine and you just see a glimpse of his spines glowing. Yep.
Yes, that's a tease. This, I mean, I think technically that first shot of the movie, after you see the text typing out on the screen, you're zooming out from the cells, and then it's a close-up of Godzilla, and I'm pretty sure it's a newly filmed close-up for this movie. It's like the first shot of the movie is a close-up of Godzilla. Like, how is that a tease? I don't know. That's just me. I feel like maybe this person has a certain narrative they're trying to craft over, you know, where they're trying to minimize or maximize the screen time of certain movies to try and create a certain narrative that they're trying to wield. I don't know, but I'm like, that's not a tease. That's a Godzilla reveal right off the bat, you know?
Yeah, I almost put that early on as just, you know, his first appearance. And then I was like, well, I'll just count his first appearance as like full appearances coming out of the volcano. I'll just leave it as that one.
Yeah. Each to their own. We can, you know, we'll leave it at that. Or, well, my whole thing is that once you start to say like there's a tease, that starts to feel objective, you know? Like a close-up of Godzilla that I'm pretty sure is newly filmed for this movie. What is the grounds by calling that a tease when it's mixed with some stock footage and you're seeing it versus, you know, you're seeing spines in the water versus, you know, Godzilla raids again. It's like a full shot view of a fight going on. It's like, just because it's brief doesn't mean that that's somehow not a legitimate appearance from the creatures, but they categorize that as a tease as well. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like this person's got kind of like, you know, a certain bent that they're trying to have in terms of like, you know, oh, this movie doesn't really show Godzilla early. That's just a tease. It's like, well, no, it does show Godzilla early. You know, I don't know.
That's all right. And I mean, I agree with you. I do. But I mean, that's probably what it's thinking, is that it's a short glimpse, so we'll call that a tease. You know, a quick little. Yeah. I might just take umbrage with where the line is drawn at what qualifies as a tease and what qualifies as an appearance, you know, but whatever. That's all up for debate. That's the only reason I don't like it. It just feels like it's their opinion more so than like what is fact, but whatever. That's all right. Before we ramble too much and start disagreeing with people.
Yeah,
I'll go into my favorite character for you, and it was mine was Dr. Shiragami. I liked him. He you know, he's just another guy trying to do his job, and he ends up losing his daughter, and then I don't know if you'd want to say he kind of goes off the deep end a little bit and starts doing a little extra experimenting and trying to like gene splice and DNA splice. And he just almost kind of becomes like a recluse to himself, you know, doesn't want to be a part of anybody. And I mean, I understand that. I feel like if I lost my daughter, I would kind of be the same way. I wouldn't want to be around anybody. Just leave me to my work. Let me do what I'm good at. And I just like his character in this. He seems like somebody who, the way he acts or portrays his character is how somebody in that field would act if they lost their daughter and just almost went off the deep end.
Yeah, that's a great choice. He's an interesting character. He has that kind of Dr. Frankenstein thing going on, where sort of science being taken a bit too far to a tragic ending sort of character arc. For me, this one was very hard to pick a favorite character, because as I was watching the movie, I would kind of think that I was dialed into my favorite character, and then another character would kind of steal the spotlight a little bit, and it's a tough one. I mean, I love the cast overall. I think I'd have to. Oh man, it's tough. It's tough. I'd have to go maybe Colonel Gondo, just because his whole attitude is kind of like laid back, and he's just a cool guy. He looks kind of like a Japanese Harvey Keitel, and like that's that's just cool to me. But he's firing. He's monitoring Godzilla in the volcano. He's trying to keep Godzilla from being released. He's part of the team of firing the rockets with the anti-nuclear bacteria into Godzilla's mouth. He goes out like an absolute boss fighting Godzilla. He's an interesting character. I have to give shout outs to Miki Sagusa, and I love the Seradian agent as the villain of the movie. He's just kind of cool and mysterious and evil. But, Colonel Gondo's he's just very easy to love.
Absolutely, I agree. And I also liked the other colonel, and I can't remember his name.
The major, the young guy.
The younger guy.
Yes. Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. He was up there as well. I'm shocked I didn't mention him, but he's got a really cool, there's a lot of interesting, it's a good ensemble in this movie, and he's this military character who's young and sort of feels innovative and new and trying different things. He lets Miki Sagusa try her ESP on Godzilla. He's just got an interesting dynamic to him, and he has kind of a show stealing moment there near the end when he takes out the Seradian agent. But it would have been interesting that as Miki Sagusa continued throughout these movies, it would have been interesting to maybe have a role. His character comes back in a future film, but it would have been interesting to see him continue on in the same extent that Miki Sagusa did.
Yeah, and almost kind of have them running parallel with each other, since he's in the defense forces and she's always around the news and the defense forces and helping them with Godzilla. So it would have been, like you said, it would have been cool to see those two kind of work together in future films and continue on from here.
Yeah, but either way, we get him in this movie and it's great.
Absolutely. I do like him as a character, but he just wasn't the one I chose in this one. I guess you could say he wasn't in it enough for me.
Yeah. One interesting thing I want to mention about while we're on characters is the character of Erica at the beginning, who dies, is not the same character from The Return of Godzilla, but is played by the same actress who was the young female lead in The Return of Godzilla. And I always thought that was interesting. I remember I watched one video review years ago on YouTube where they talked about how it was the same. They just looked up and saw it was the same actress, and they talked about how it was the same character from Return of Godzilla that got killed at the beginning of this movie. It's it's not the same character, it's the same actress, but she's playing a different character.
I can honestly say I did not recognize that, and I watched these movies 2 days apart, so I feel ashamed for not recognizing that.
Well, they're made 5 years apart. Her hair is totally different, and she's only in Biollante very briefly. And of course, if you grew up watching it dubbed, you weren't getting the same voice actress or anything. And not to be mean, but Americans, sometimes fall into that. We're not, across movies, it'd be pretty easy to confuse an actress playing a different character in a minor role 5 years later with different hairstyles. You're racist, basically, but
hey, if they look like Mickey, I'm 100% okay with that. No,
yeah, exactly.
or Erica.
Interesting because it's interesting because later on in the Heisei series, we get a situation where it's sort of the inversion, where it's a character coming back, but it's a different actor playing the character, and it's an actor who's played a character from another movie. Without getting into exact spoilers, it's very odd, but you have a character. It's hard to explain it, but the character of Sho Kuroki from Biollante, the Major, his character is back in Destroya, but he's being played by the actor from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla in 1993. So you have an actor coming back as a different character, whereas this time it was, so it's just an interesting thing. They always mix and match the cast in these movies.
And I always love seeing them old characters back, so I'm 100% okay with it. I'll go on to my favorite quote, and it's also from Dr. Shiragami, and it's just, Godzilla and Biollante aren't monsters. It's the arrogant scientists who create them. And there were a couple good lines in this film, and I just like that because everybody's, they're trying to kill and get rid of Godzilla. They're trying to distract him, take him back out to sea, get him away from the city. I did like one of the quotes from the Major during the first battle of Godzilla vs. Biollante, and he goes, our enemy will be the winner of this one, or our enemy will be the winner of this battle. And just like stating like Godzilla's going to destroy this plant thing. And I got a good chuckle out of that.
Yeah, or I kind of took it to mean that whatever creature comes out, like we're going to let one of these monsters kill the other one, and then we're going to fight the winner, And I like that. I like that line as well. My favorite line, the sort of one that I kind of picked out as kind of capturing the theme of the movie, was from Kirishima. And he says, if they play around with cells, genetic engineers might well create their own chimera, a new life form, totally alien, totally different to what God intended for Earth. Frightening, don't you think? And I just think that really, that's the theme of the movie. That's very much what Biollante is. And genetic engineering and things like that were very sort of topical at this point in time. This is the same period of time where Michael Crichton was developing the concept and behind the Jurassic Park story and the Jurassic Park novel, using genetic engineering to bring back old life forms. So it was very, this was on the minds of a lot of people at this time. And so, I enjoy it when the Godzilla films reflect the hot button issues of when they're made.
Absolutely. And that is a great quote. I thought about that one, and I went with Dr. Shiragami's instead, and I'm glad I did because it gave you a chance for that one, because that is a great line, and I'm glad you picked that one because I didn't, and if neither of us would have, I would have felt bad.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. It's a solid one.
All right, so I'll go into favorite score, and
can I go first?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Alrighty, my favorite piece of music from this movie, and possibly from the entire Heisei era, would be Bio Wars, the opening title music. I think it's like the purest and most awesome 80s version of a Godzilla theme. It's one of those things where it's like if they had dropped a hot, crazy Godzilla anime in the 90s, you could just see that being like the opening music for the Godzilla anime. Love that track to death, and it's iconic to me, so that's hands down my favorite.
I wanted to go with the Godzilla theme or the Godzilla march, like when he is released from the volcano, but I figured that would kind of almost be like a cop out. So I ended up going with one. There's not like an official soundtrack for this that you can like look up on like Spotify or Pandora or any Apple Music or anything like that. But there is some of the tracks on YouTube, so I was listening to it on there, and the one I chose ended up being called Countdown, and it kind of starts off like this. I don't know why I like that. I'm an instrumentation guy. I like to hear the different instruments and whatnot. So that kind of hit me as a fun little upbeat and with score with good instrumentation. So I ended up choosing that one.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good track. It's the best piece of kind of like new traditional music in this movie. This movie does bring back like a few of the classic tracks. It brings back like the sort of military march or the monster march that was heard and stuff. You know, the dun 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 dun. They bring that back in one scene. They have the classic, they have the classic Godzilla theme playing at several points, which is very welcome after Return of Godzilla. But man, Bio Wars, I can drive down the highway, speeding down the highway, rocking out some Bio Wars.
See, I won't disagree with you, but I'm not as high on it. I do like it, and I don't like it as much, but I can definitely listen to it. But all around, I mean, this is a good soundtrack. I do like this soundtrack better than the previous film.
Mm-hmm. And I even like there's sort of this sort of main kind of adventurous theme that someone once said it feels like it's like a Steven Spielberg kind of a Star Trek-y sort of adventurous kind of music that you hear a lot throughout the film. And I even enjoy that piece. People say it feels kind of out of place, but I mean, I immediately think of this movie when I hear it, so I don't know how out of place it necessarily is.
Yeah, and I mean, the music goes very well with the scenes that the soundtrack is put to. So I mean, that's another thing I like to look at is how does this music flow with this scene, or what is it doing for the scene? Is it carrying it, or is it making this scene better, the fight scene, or is this dramatic scene with the humans, does it have the music that has some tension in it? It's mysterious, or so I always like to look at the soundtrack like that as well.
Yeah, I think they nail it with this one. It's a great score. So hats off to, oh gosh, here, let me butcher these names. Sugiyama and Saito, the two people listed for the music. I'll just go with last names, but hats off to them. It's a great score.
Absolutely. I couldn't disagree with you at all on that. Well, I'll let you go first for your favorite scene as well then. We'll go 2 and 2 here.
All right, it would be easy to pick Godzilla's emergence from the volcano with the theme, but the one that always stuck with me from when I was a little kid, and it always stuck with me, is when they're going to the sort of ESP center and they're building up, all these children, drew a picture of what they dreamed, hey children, show us all what you dreamed last night, and every kid raises up a picture of Godzilla with the Godzilla theme coming in right on that shot. Like it hits that shot hits perfectly. Like every single time I watch the movie, that moment just lands, and I love it to death. It's like, yeah, Godzilla's definitely coming, and it's such an exciting moment to be nothing related to monsters and nothing related to action. But I always think of that shot. I
do like that one as well very much. It's I always look at some of the kids' drawings and it's like, damn, they're better than I am, and yeah, I'm 20-some years old.
Someone always pointed out that one of them, where Godzilla is sort of colored in almost a darker purple light, it almost looks like a shot from Shin Godzilla. And so people have speculated, like, did they kind of like like imitate that shot in Shin Godzilla, or is it just like a lucky coincidence? And it's a shame because, you know, I mentioned that as my favorite scene, but the monster action and the monster battles and all of the monster effects work in this movie is so damn good that it's like it's a shame to not mention some of that as your favorite scenes. But I mean, that unique one of the kids lifting up all of their drawings and all of the drawings being Godzilla, like that one's just too memorable to not mention.
I'll give you that one. I'll give you 4 or 5 stars for that one, because I do. that is a great scene, because nobody's gonna pick that, you know, and nobody's gonna think of that scene. But then when you bring that up, it's like, that is good, you know, the teacher walking in and you got 30 students just all dreaming of the same thing, and they're just like, oh my god, he's coming.
Yeah, it's a great bit of foreshadowing.
Absolutely. My favorite scene, I kind of had trouble between two, and one was Godzilla when against the Defense Force, when they were trying to raise his temperature, so he was stepping on, I don't know if you want to call them like the little pods that they laid to like kind of electrocute him and get his temperature up in the rain. Yeah. I love scenes like that with the Godzilla theme roaring in the background, and then you got, speaking of roaring, you got this Godzilla and the roar in this. Again, it's just so gritty and dark, and it's so mean. And that with the theme, and then him fighting the Defense Force, it's just, that's something I always look forward to in a Godzilla film, is him destroying some tanks and helicopters and masers and whatever else they can throw at him. And then the other one would be the final fight scene with Godzilla vs Biollante in her, what we know of as her final form. And she just got like the crocodile almost looking mouth and is just massive, and that's just a great scene. I mean, anyone who's seen this film knows what I'm talking about when I say it's a short little fight scene, but it's a fantastic scene.
Yeah, I agree on all counts there. Godzilla in the rain, charging his dorsal plates, you know, the darkness with the rain juxtaposing with him like blasting his blast, the bright blue, like it always just creates a really great color palette. And that's a great scene. And yeah, you can throw up any of the monster action, you know, Miki Sagusa using her telekinesis to kind of pause Godzilla and change his direction. You know, all of that stuff. It's just, there's just like one memorable scene after another in this movie. You know, it's not anywhere close to just generic monster action. You know, it's all got a unique spin to it. You know, Godzilla fighting a giant flower that's like a tentacle-based creature, and using his sort of atomic pulse or atomic shockwave to kind of shred the tentacles after they wrap around him. You know, instead of using his blast from his mouth, he's got this sort of shockwave ability. Like it's all good stuff. It's all good stuff.
It sure is, and it just goes along with us, you know, being big fanboys on this film. You know, clearly this one can't do no wrong so far.
Yeah, while we're on this note, but I didn't know when exactly to drop this in, but I love that the American rating for this movie is rated PG for traditional Godzilla violence. I think that's one of the coolest MPAA ratings that's ever been issued, that's officially what it is, you know? Like, I think that's fantastic. And I love that this is one of the more violent Godzilla movies. There's a lot of, you know, juices and goop and monster blood and all kinds of stuff like that going on in this movie. And I just really like it when monster fights in kaiju movies just get really visceral and violent and shed a lot of blood.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for, man. Beat the crap out of each other. That's why we're in the theater or watching it at home, either or. All right, well, let me give you some fun facts. I got a couple here. This is the second entry in the Heisei series of Godzilla films. But Godzilla vs. Biollante was the first Godzilla film to actually be released during Japan's political Heisei period. So, just a little history nod there. Composer Akira Ifukube, who had refused to compose the film's score, stated on an interview that he disliked the way Koichi Sugiyama had modernized his Godzilla theme and defined the Saradia theme as ridiculous on account of it sounding more European than Middle Eastern.
Well, Akira Ifukube is entitled to his opinion, and he is a legend. And I can understand that if BioWars is the track he's referring to like the weird modernization of the Godzilla theme, yeah, sure, that is no replacement for the classic Godzilla theme. But, you know, I will just respectfully disagree and just say that this is just a fantastic 80s Godzilla score. You know, it might not hold up with the kind of legacy of Akira Ifukube's tracks. There are several of his tracks still in the movie, but you know, I'll just, you know, he's absolutely entitled to his own opinion, and I'll just cordially disagree.
Absolutely. I mean, clearly he's great, but I don't find anything wrong with the soundtrack here. So I'll go on to the next one in all respect for him.
Yeah, exactly. Rest in peace.
Absolutely. Though this film was not a financial failure, it did not perform well at Toho's, as well as Toho expected, causing them to have serious thoughts and have a brief 2-year hiatus and what they could do next with the franchise. And what they came up was they needed to bring back an established enemy monster. So King Ghidorah was brought back for the next film, hoping to raise the box office and make some more money and get some higher ratings for the next film.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, you know, that's just one of the other things where I lament that this movie wasn't some giant mega hit when it came out, because who knows what kind of unique Godzilla franchise we might have gotten that followed it. You know, I kind of lament that they just decided they had to go back to the well, that was the trick, to just bring back classic monsters. It's fun to see classics reinvented, but man, I would have loved to see what the Heisei series would have looked like if this movie had kind of been a big mega hit and they had a bit more of an assurance to keep going into these unique and interesting directions and give us some more new monsters.
Yeah, just, I mean, imagine if this movie, you know, sold 5-6 million tickets and was just a banger at the box office, and who knows what we would have gotten. You know, maybe like an all-out monster bash, or even a newer, badder monster than Biollante. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
The last one I got for you is, this is the first Godzilla film for actor Koichi Ueda, who would play a role in every Godzilla film after this until Godzilla Final Wars.
That's interesting. That's a heck of a track record.
Yeah, what's that? 6? It's like 11 films, 12 films.
Yeah, something to that extent, which is very impressive.
Well, episodes moving forward, I'll have to point out which character he is in the future films, so that way we can keep track.
Yeah. We'll have to start doing some video companions to putting a lot of faces and names to these characters. You know, it's always one of those things. It's like, should we go out of the way to try and consistently mention every single actor and actress that reappears either as the same character or as new characters? But it's like sometimes it seems like that almost would be a fool's errand, you know, because it happens so often and so frequently sometimes.
Yeah, I've thought about it, and I've listened to some other podcasts that do that for other films and such. And I've thought about it. I guess we just haven't got there yet. And like you said, there's so many recurring characters in the Godzilla franchise that every film we're gonna name somebody that has played in a previous film.
Yeah, and I think that's more of a thing, tracking that sort of thing. It was more, if this were a sort of video series, I think that'd be a little easier, because then otherwise we're just throwing out names of actors and names of characters, and people listening off the cuff, like, you're not necessarily seeing or thinking about that connection. You know, if we had a way to show video clips or images from the movies and kind of tie it all together, that I think there'd be more utility there. But for an audio podcast, it's a little tough to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, if people care that much, I mean, watch the films. watch the films, look up the cast. You know, we're all in on trying to get people to give these films a little more love than they've gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. Go watch them, and then one up us in the comments and throw out all of your trivia and things that you loved about the movies. By all means, spread the love. Show these movies to people who've never seen them.
Absolutely. But when it comes to Godzilla vs Biollante, I'll start early and go with, what did you think of the redesigned, or somewhat redesigned, Super X with the fire mirror that can shoot back at Godzilla at 1,000-fold?
Oh, I like it. I'm a big fan of Super X every time it appears. I love it diving into the water, coming back out of the water. I loved, as a kid, I especially just always loved the sort of diamond mirror that it had to kind of revert Godzilla's blast back at him. And I like that it's kind of this almost sort of inaccurate, kind of unstable sort of thing. It's not like a King Caesar taking it into one eye and shooting it right out of the other eye. Like, it reflects the blast, and it you know, if it reflects it back at Godzilla and hits him or kind of gets close to him, that's great. But you can tell that it's mostly designed to just kind of nullify the blast, to keep the blast from causing immediate destruction. And by spitting it back out in his general direction, like sometimes it's hitting him, sometimes it's kind of getting in the area. But I like that it's sort of an imprecise kind of weapon, that it's almost more defensive than it is offensive. And I like that the technology still ultimately fails against the power of Godzilla's blast, that it ultimately doesn't hold up.
Yeah, I like the Super X too as well. I do like what you said, the diving in the water and then coming out. And I have a favorite scene with the Super X, and it's when I believe Godzilla's walking down, I don't know if it's like a river or what it is, like a lake, but the Super X is it's firing its missiles at him, and they're trying to keep him on track. You know, can you keep him right here? And then he's like, "We're all out of missiles, sir." And I love that he's walking in the middle of the city, and they're trying to keep him on track. They're just firing their missiles at him. Keep him here. Keep him where he's at. You know.
Yeah,
and
because they're trying to set up for the ambush with the rockets.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. I like that it's that they've transformed it from being a pilots inside of the vessel to being a drone controlled machine. I like that. That's a cool sort of progression, that it's like, you know, you can argue that it's less exciting because there's not a human at risk when they're piloting it, but it's also more realistic that they probably would switch to a drone based control of it, and that way later on when they decide to just kind of sacrifice it against Godzilla, it makes sense because it's just a piece of machinery. You know, I like that. I like that progression of it.
Absolutely. Well, what did you think of the Big G himself in this one?
To me, this is a peak Godzilla design. You know, all the adjustments that they made from 84 to this one. Like, I always kind of describe it like his lower jaw kind of has like a rectangular shape to it, sort of the way that the lower jaw is shaped. And I've always just loved the silhouette of it. I like the proportion of the neck to the head to the snout. I just think it's one of the strongest and most sort of, you think Godzilla and you think of this kind of Heisei design. So it's one of my favorites. You know, I know there are differences throughout the Heisei movies, kind of film to film, but generally speaking, like, this movie kind of codifies the look, and this is kind of the Heisei look, and I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite for the Heisei suits. Well, this and in the next film, it's pretty much somewhat the same suit design. And then as you go on, and we'll talk about these in future episodes, you get little tweaks here and there. But this one is right up there. If you were doing a tier list, it's right up there with the 54 version. It's perfect. It's a perfect Godzilla design to me.
Yeah, it's a great look, you know.
I love this Heisei design. I mean, there's nothing more I could say about this, but to tell you that I think it's a perfect design. I love it, and if this was the design that we got for every Godzilla film here on out, I wouldn't complain. It's a good design. I wish we kept the roar, cause that gritty, mean, like animalistic sounding roar is just something that has always been a top tier sound in the Godzilla franchise for me.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect modernization where it still sounds like the obvious Godzilla roar, but it just has a little bit of that extra grit and extra oomph and extra sort of beastly animal vibe to it, sort of taking it back to the original movie in some ways, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I also noticed in this one that Godzilla uses his atomic breath in this one a lot more than we have seen before in the past.
Oh yeah, they're definitely like this special effects supervisor that presided over most of these Heisei films apparently had an affinity not only for monsters that transformed and took on multiple forms, but also for lasers and energy blasts and light shows. And so there's a whole lot of maser tanks and Godzilla spamming his breath left and right, and almost every monster in these movies has some kind of laser attack, and so they're apparently a big fan of the sort of those colorful, vivid kind of effects, and we'll see that as we move forward with the Heisei era.
Yeah, and that's one of the gripes I've heard from fans about the Heisei era is all they do is shoot beams at each other. There's no up close, punch and brawl and knockout battles. It's just a bunch of beam fights. But
I'm okay with beam fights, man. That's eye candy to me, and it just feels, beam battles always just feels very sort of anime, very Dragon Ball Z to me. So I'm always okay with beams flying everywhere.
Yeah, and I just look at it as I appreciate the special effects because it took time and money to make that special effect, and when somebody is blowing their atomic breath or their heat ray or whatever they got, they have to go in and digitally put that in, and then they have to have the explosion perfectly match up with that, and then kind of like put the two scenes together and make it work. So I mean, I appreciate beam battles and all that just as much as a knock 'em sock 'em all out brawl. I like them all.
Exactly, and sometimes some of the sort of up close hand to hand battles can sometimes make it feel a little too human and make it feel a little bit too much like guys just moving around in suits. So if you do a lot more of the battles as like energy blast laser exchanges, it kind of puts the monsters on this kind of other level of like they're not really, they're these stiff, not very sort of acrobatic and athletic creatures because they're these just massive monsters that don't really move very sort of with a lot of agility, and so they're just and they have these energy blasts, and they're just using the energy blasts. It makes them, in some ways, you can argue that it makes them feel a little bit more unhuman and a bit more disconnected and monstrous.
Yeah, absolutely. And without going too far and bringing up monstrous, how do you feel about Biollante? Because she in this film is absolutely monstrous. She is huge once she gets to the final form. But we'll start with like the rose form, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I do love multi-stage monsters. I like that it begins with just the tentacles in the lab, and it's sort of on a human scale and human level at that point. I think there would have been like a lot of great opportunities when it reaches rose form to kind of have the tentacles still maybe like coming onto land and going after people or going after military that approached it or going after like small boats in the water, to kind of monsters that can kind of have that down to human scale threat outside of just stepping on things. I love monsters like that. The rose form is very cool, very unique. It's sort of stationary. That makes it feel very sort of plant-like and alien. and not normal. It doesn't have like arms and legs. It's kind of just like a pillar there, and it's all tentacle based. I love that more delicate form gets like completely thrashed by Godzilla in a lot of ways, just like eviscerated and blown away, and then it comes back in a more, you could argue that as it progresses, it becomes more Godzilla-esque in its form, and so that the final form kind of, it has this alligator jaw, but that's sort of on a scale from a rose to Godzilla, like it's a bit more of like a plant monstrous Godzilla looking snout, and it kind of has some of the plant kind of leaflets or plates on its back sort of look like they're kind of like, you know, proto versions of Godzilla's spine. So it's like this is becoming this unique kind of plant version of Godzilla, like a true like plant Godzilla hybrid, and she's just an excellent creature, excellent monster. I love everything about her.
All right. Well, I don't even have to say anything because Chris said it all perfectly. But no, I like the rose form. It almost is. I like how it almost makes her rose form so like delicate and like very vulnerable, and it just
it has kind of this kind of whale call, this like very gentle sort of roar. It's a great touch.
Yeah, it's just like its rose form is almost like sad. Like they say in the film that it's calling out for Godzilla, but Biolante's sad. Like, okay, well, why are you sad? You're calling out for a monster that is probably going to come destroy you. And I like how it like tries to block itself with its tentacles, and eventually Godzilla's heat ray just gets through and just completely obliterates it and lights it on fire. And you know, a sad theme kicks in, and you kind of see Biolante's final form just a little bit in the background as it's like, I don't know if you want to call it its life force is kind of floating off into the sky.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a good scene.
Yeah, an interesting thing about Biollante is it's sort of, you know, they kind of play up that it's sort of Erica's soul in there a little bit. So it's like this monster kind of driven by a human, or this sort of human soul sort of trapped in a monster body. So it's that first flower form is kind of like has this sad, tragic vibe to it, and it's calling out probably to the one thing in the world that's kind of similar to it, which is Godzilla. You know, maybe not even knowing what Godzilla intends to do. You know, maybe from the perspective of Biollante, when Godzilla arrives and just starts attacking it, you know, that's not what it expected, and it's, you know, it's an interesting dynamic. It's just, you know, it makes for a unique creature with a unique sort of storyline of its own.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love it. The final form, you said everything there is to say. I absolutely love it. I love how during the film, you know, when Biolante's moving forward, they do like the camera shake to make it seem monstrous. And that was a great touch. That's a great touch. But I mean, other than that,
yeah, you get a sense for the scale when it sort of brings Godzilla's head up to its own mouth, and Godzilla's blasting inside of its mouth, and you just kind of get the sense of just how massive that thing is, even compared to Godzilla.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how big that they made that animatronic and suit and all that. It's just a massive thing that they did.
Yeah, and I love some of the dialogue that they have where they kind of say like Godzilla aren't brother and sister, they're almost the same creature, Godzilla and Biollante. Like they're from the same cells, like they're almost this kindred spirit, you know, two halves of a coin, and I think that's really interesting.
Absolutely. Well, that's all on Biollante. Do you have anything else for 1989's Godzilla vs. Biollante in this one?
I mean, outside of Hedorah, Biollante would probably be my top pick for a monster that I would love to see reimagined with modern visual effects. So, like, I just hope, whether it's a Japanese movie or one of the MonsterVerse movies, I would love to see a modern take on a creature like Biollante, because I think there's insane potential.
Absolutely. And even, especially, I mean, with the money they have for CGI nowadays, I mean, they could do that justice for sure.
Yeah. So that's my final note. Is just a call to action to hopefully bring back Biollante in some movie.
Absolutely. And my final note on this film is watch it. This is an absolute recommend. I mean, if you watch it, you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, if you've got one of those, if you're one of the people that are like, oh, I don't know where to start, or if you've got a friend that's kind of like, oh, those hokey movies from the 60s, you know, this is one of them to show them that it's like, this is just like a pure 80s creature feature, and it's got a great score, it's got fun characters, it's got great monster action and violence. It's firing on all cylinders for a Godzilla movie, and this is definitely one of the best ones you could show to a newcomer or experience as a newcomer.
Yeah, if you want to put it on a ranking, this is a Godzilla Atomic Heat Ray level Godzilla film.
Yeah, it's G tier on the tier list. It's G tier.
Absolutely.
So while we're on this note in terms of kind of ranking the Heisei series as they go, you know, I rank it above Return of Godzilla, and I would so far the Heisei series is 2 for 2, and it might be tough, but if we're doing the kind of comparison, you know, this is the third film in this timeline versus King Kong versus Godzilla being the third film in the Showa timeline. I gotta go Biollante over King Kong versus Godzilla.
Absolutely. I'm going to agree with your rankings. The Return of Godzilla is in my 2 spot right now, and Godzilla vs. Biollante is taking over the number 1 spot. And of course, I'm not getting rid of any until we get to that the 5th film, because we're doing a keep 4.
Yeah. I think I don't know if I want to amend that, because as I was looking over, I was like, oh, maybe I almost want to keep 5 really badly. I want to. There's almost like it's 2 of them that I kind of want to get rid of, and then I want to keep the other 5. I spoke too soon.
Keep 4, get rid of 3. We'll make it hard on you.
Oh gosh, oh man, then it's going to be very, very difficult then. But we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, if that's all for Godzilla vs. Biollante, next week we will be looking at Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, which was released theatrically in Japan on December 14th, 1991. So, Chris, thanks for joining me for this one. This is a good one, and I feel like we have another good one coming up, so hopefully that one will be just as much fun next week.
Yeah, it'll be a good episode. I've got some choice criticisms of it, but it's a fun one. So I'm sure I'm going to come into it being like, oh, I'm going to hate this, and then we're going to watch it, and I'm going to be like, okay, here's all the things I love about it. But we will see. We will see.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining me. Thanks anyone and everyone for listening, and until next time.